Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. India Hate Lab, a Washington DC based group that documents hate speech against the minorities in India, in its report Hate Speech Events in India, has revealed that India recorded 668 documented hate speech events that targeted Muslims in the year 2023. The report also says about 75% of these events, which happened to be 498, took place in the BJP ruled states, union territories which are administered by the BJP-led central government. The report also reveals that 78% of all the events involving direct calls to violence occurred in BJP-administered states and territories. Also, 78% of all hate speech events targeting places of worship were recorded in BJP-ruled places. Now, since BJP came into power back in 2014, also getting re-elected back in 2019, it has been involved in the brutal discrimination towards minorities, especially when we talk about the state of affairs towards the Muslims in India that happen to be a considerable part of the demography over there. International organizations, especially when we talk about the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, has repeatedly urged its State Department to include India in the list of countries of particular concern owing to its treatment towards the religious minorities. We'll be taking all these aspects and these revelations in these reports for discussion with our panelists. Also, there has been a development. Natasha Cole, a professor of political science in the UK's University of Westminster, was denied entry upon her arrival on the invitation of the Karnataka government in order to participate in the seminar, and she had been critical of the policies of Prime Minister Modi and his government also. Now, this particular incident is not the first of its kind. We have seen similar pattern of incidents happening, similar sort of high-handed approach on the part of Indian authorities towards the people of Indian origin who are based in the foreign countries, who have been critical of Prime Minister Modi and his policies. According to Indian Home Ministry, in the past few years, more than 100 overseas citizens of India cards have been cancelled, and these cancellations actually pertain to those people who have been critical of the policies of Modi and his government. Also, we have seen as the general election is pretty much close, is going to be held in April and May in India. The opposition leader, opposition party Congress leader Rahul Gandhi is having a campaign, and in his 4,000-mile march tells the voters to wake up to the huge gap and the vast gulf between them and the rich. And we'll also be talking about the prospects after his caste census call. Will it be able to provide him with any positive results in the upcoming general elections, and would his party be able to give a tough time to the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party and its Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is eyeing the third term and seems pretty confident to have a landslide victory in the upcoming general elections. All these up for discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Awais Bin Wasi. He is Indian affairs expert. Dr. Wasi, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Waleed Rasool. He is international relations expert. Dr. Rasool, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. In the studio at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar. He is foreign affairs expert. Dr. Kausar, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Wasi. Now, these statistics which have been shared by India Hate Lab, now 668 documented hate speech events that were specifically targeted towards Muslims. By looking at these statistics, and also that 75% of the events took place in the BJP-ruled states and territories, what does that actually depict, this particular pattern of these specific incidents towards Muslims?
In fact, this pattern that you have referred and you have alluded in your opening remarks, this is the consistent one. And we have seen since 2014, since the first ascension of BJP into power, that such practices are so rampant. and so widespread from north to south and east to west that this phenomenon of this minority persecution of them, that is we observe and the world is also witnessing. And this is quite evident from the consistent reports that we are getting and we are seeing in international media. The UN Rapporteur Concern and United States Religious Freedom Commission, that also, and this is not for the first time that 2023, I think for the last many years, it has been consistently asking to designate India for country of particular interest. So, there are many other organizations, civil society organizations, and even within India, if you see the statements of Arundhati Rai, Ajit Sahi, and some other senior voices, so you can see that such kind of persecution with minorities, 14% minority Muslims, they are, the proportion is 14%, and they are largely being persecuted, and their representation in all the representative bodies, that is quite negligible.
Right, Dr. Rasool, your understanding regarding this particular trend ever since BJP came to power back in 2014, again capitalizing on that anti-Muslim sentiment all across and also gaining power, getting re-elected back in 2019. What's your understanding? So this particular discrimination towards minorities has been increasing with every single passing day. The more they grab the power, the more brutal discrimination they meted out towards Muslims.
I think it is an trajectory of cultural and ideological hegemony, and it is driven by a doctrine, and we must not, rather the region or the globe or the SAN community, international community shall not take it easy, because it is now deep rooted and it has now spillover effects not only within the India but outside India also. And secondly, they are making a constituency which is driven by the hatred, and the main objective of that society, which is making some intellectual property also on the basis that Hindutva doctrine shall prevail in the region. So it is not just we must not look it at the micro level, but at the macro level. So, and we must engage those global powers who have been threatened by cultural hegemony around the globe, and this is very lethal and poisonous drive by Modi regime.
Right, when you mention of the spillover effect, we have heard this terminology when we speak of that terrorism, especially when certain soils are being used, where from that particular menace actually emanates from. Now, this Hindutva ideology and this particular doctrine that you speak of, I mean, how that spillover effect of this particular doctrine can be seen in the future, if not put a full stop to it?
Actually, when you are analyzing the Hindutva mindset through the prism how they have been given the power by the state, we call it superstructures of the state. When anything is powered by superstructures of the state, then there is no room for other minorities. And same you have been witnessed it among the Muslims, now how they are being alienated and how they are targeted, and how a particular ideology which is ideologically, which is culturally, and which is being given impetus at by the languages of the Hindutva or Hindi and the Sanskrit. So it is multidimensional, and Modi regime is driving it in the various fronts. So you have rightly mentioned it, when we are talking about the spillover effects of this Hindutva mindset, it will definitely shape the new South. We must it will shape the very bad situation in the South Asian region, not only in the India.
Right now, Dr. Kausar, now when we talk about the spillover effect, a very important point that has been raised by Dr. Rasool as to the spillover effect of this particular phenomenon and the kind of actions that we've seen on the part of Indian authorities ever since they came into power, led by Bharatiya Janata Party. What's your understanding? What sort of possible spillover effect owing to this particular ideology could be, especially when we talk about the South Asian region?
Thank you first of all for having me on your show. I guess first we need to deconstruct what exactly BJP has done to the Indian polity. The idea that, I mean the statement that you written there or spoke about the secular nature of India and what did happen to India after that. I guess first we need to see that India was drawing a lot of strength from its pluralistic nature of its constitution and its overall democratic national project that India had initially. What happened over the period of time that BJP, if you see in 2014, it had around 282 seats, I guess, and then in 19 they have 300, and now they're trying to, and in fact the Prime Minister claimed that will surpass 370. You need to understand 2-3 important things. One is that, of course, when it comes to the Narendra Modi as a personality, what happened is that it has literally dominated Indian politics, particularly when it comes to the national politics. Try to present himself somebody as a savior broader. Because BJP was inspired from very extremist ideologies and identities, the idea is that, you know, you built on fears, you built on insecurities. What happened over the period of time that what BJP has done to its own populace, particularly constituency, that it built that constituency from the point of hate and division. And that was, I guess, a departure from the very pluralistic nature of Indian society and Indian democratic polity. Number two, see, over the period of time, it has a lot of spillover effect. First, we need to see what did happen within India. I mean, there is a lot of debate that since it's a very diverse in nature, the country particularly, so there is a very clear north and south divide, particularly in politics of India. So what happened is that, of course, not dominated by BJP, but there's a huge swathe of population that is outside the Indian BJP's politics. There is, of course, if you see, I mean, he is a popular leader, no doubt, but if you see, Rajiv had around 400 seats in 1984, and what happened in 1986, it's in front of you. So the idea is that there is a larger threat to the federation itself, because the states, particularly southern states, those are not under the BJP particularly, and the states which are not aligning with these extremist identities, quite progressive, they are feeling marginalized, and they've been claiming that their economic rights and their dignity have not been protected. So that's real danger there. Because over the period of time you would see, I mean, if you see many states like Uttarakhand, if you see, they've never witnessed Muslims and Hindus conflicts and that sort of violence in past, because that is the way it is coming up now. If you see in Punjab particularly, there's a resurgence in the people, and particularly farmers. It has a political dimension because people are feeling alienated. On the other side, second, I must say that particularly within BJP, if you see that the way the communities have been divided, Modi tried to portray himself as a larger Hindu political plus religious personality. Sort of, I mean, you can see the Ram Mandir thing, you can see the inauguration of their parliament by priest and other that. So he has in fact crossed that line of politics and religion quite openly. So that is a problem within Indian society, that the gaps are widening. I mean, if you see the economic thing as well, I mean, see, people are talking about the GDP of India, that's fine. It might be 5-6%, and it is there. In past, it was more even. But that growth doesn't translate into inclusive development. So even the recent survey says that there are many people, particularly within India, young people, those who are unemployed looking for jobs. So it might be a growth for some section of the society which is very much aligned with the BJP's politics of division. But on the other side, you have a huge population which is alienated. This is a dangerous trend for India. And I guess as far as BJP is winning, they don't mind to create that further divisions, because of course you have to, when you feed that constituency over fear, then you have to build that constituency further on the further fears and alienations.
Right, Dr. Kausar, you already mentioned the case of Rajiv Gandhi, who had earlier won, and later on he lost. And we have also seen back in 2014, BJP had lesser seats as compared to the number of seats it actually garnered in the general elections in 2019. Now they're with the confidence claiming that they might, as you mentioned, 370 plus on certain occasions, 400 plus seats. Do you see that particular history being repeated in this particular case? And if yes, what are the correlations, what are the similarities between that particular case of Rajiv Gandhi at that particular time of his loss in the next election, and this time around, what could be the Achilles heel for the BJP?
See, I guess this time the challenge is more open, I guess, because in presence of the social media, in presence of a more connected, globalized world, the BJP has more challenge because the fault lines are more open. I mean, in the case of, Muslim particularly, it's not about only Muslims now, I say. This has gone further to the Christian community. You have seen what happened in, I guess, Manipur few months ago, and what has the way the whole incident evolved. It is reflection that it's not the problem of even one religion. It's a problem of entire thinking process, that how you can alienate certain constituency to build your own constituency, and then you marginalize, and then you keep marginalizing them, and then you keep fearing your own population that, look, this is a dangerous trend. This is something which is a potential danger for you. So you have to keep them at certain length, politically exclude them, economically marginalize them, and that's a bigger challenge. So I guess this time the challenge is far more bigger, because there is one reason to it. I guess every country draws its strength based on its own constitution and politics, of course, the culture as well. India's politics over the period of time evolved, but they've been trying to portray itself as a more democratic, inclusive, and all that. And I guess in that case, that national project seems to be over, because this is a new reality in India. The media is very much controlled, if you see that. The very big business corporate houses are particularly dominating and are very much aligned with the government. If you see the civil society situation, that is quite alarming. So this time the challenges are more. It's not easy to sustain with this sort of politics and with coming up with more division. Particularly, I tell you one important thing. If you see the redrawing, they are going to do the delimitations in future. That would, of course, be based on certain population and number and all that. If you see India's internal trajectory, north, south, this division is more, and south states are more progressive. But I don't see there more share in politics in future, because of the very reason that this delimitation and all these things would go in terms of population. But I guess that's not an healthy indicator for them. So to me, go towards other factors like climate change, environment. Like Pakistan is suffering, India is even suffering more, because it has more capital intensive driven Western model now. So I personally feel that there are more chances that it's difficult it has its own shelf life. So, but to come back from that track, actually, that's a challenge for India's politics, because right now there's not a single politician actually who could challenge or counter Modi's posture.
Right, Dr. Wasi, specifically talking about the Muslim chunk of population there in India, 213 million, a considerable chunk of population over there. As Dr. Kausar is of the view, this particular gap and this division is widening with the kind of policies the BJP is carrying itself along, and with a bigger confidence this time around, that it claims that it might have over 370 plus or 400 plus seats this time around in the upcoming general elections. Now, what options do you think remain at the hand of the Muslims over there who have been continuously repressed and brutally discriminated against in the last two particular tenures of BJP government?
You know, as far as, before coming back to your question about prospects of Muslims, I think though it's very hard to predict the future political scenario after the April-May elections, because in North, in the last election, BJP secured 224 seats, and for the total number which is required, that is 272 in the House. So if it retains the same 272 and manage to get 48 seats from the South, then BJP could retain that power. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for BJP to maintain that position. But since the aura that has been created by Modi and the tactics which has already been used and proved successful, keeping those in view, we cannot deny its prospect to come again to the power. as far as Muslims, prospects or their role is concerned, that is unfortunately drastically squeezed. Even
So I'll stop you over here for just one second.
Yes.
When you talk of the chances of BJP coming back into power once again this time around, Dr. also already gave the case of Rajiv Gandhi. Now, do you find any similarities this time around, given the fact there are so many challenges already there, as Dr. Kausar has mentioned?
Challenges are, of course, challenges are there, but the way, Modi is driving the election campaign, especially it tries to consolidate the vote. For example, if you case the representative classic example of UP, so out of 80 in the last election, more than 70 seats they secured, okay? And in the, recent inauguration of Ram Temple and consecration of Ram Temple, these all things they are driving and they are pushing to advance the same agenda which proved successful, and especially in the last election there was another a very significant and decisive incident that they themselves orchestrated, that was the Balakot incident of 2019, that helped them jump their seat to 303. Earlier the polls, they were suggesting that BJP perhaps couldn't cross that 250 or 240, but after this immediate this event, so it crossed that limit. So the current scenario, if we see in India, the consolidation of Hindu votes and Modi's aura, which is being sold by BJP, I think that it could be a possibility, though it's very detrimental, it's very dangerous to the composition and the pluralistic characteristic of India. But this is what I can see.
By looking at the state legislative assembly elections in the recent past, especially when we talk about the case of Karnataka, already Bharatiya Janata Party was in power in that particular state. Now, in the recent elections, it was defeated by the Congress. There have been a lot of incidents as regards to the religious discrimination, especially towards Muslims in that particular state. What were the prime reasons that the Karnataka was won by Congress, which was of course already ruled by Bharatiya Janata Party?
There are some internal dynamics that played the role, and it dethroned BJP. But I think that one or the two states, though some people they term that these state elections are harbinger to read the trend in the national politics, national elections which is going to be held. But I don't think that after taking the case of one or two state, we can predict the larger outcome of the whole electoral exercise of Indian Lok Sabha.
Right, Dr. Rasool, now when we talk about this campaign that is underway on the part of Congress, and Congress leader Rahul Gandhi in his second march, that is from east to west, now is asking the voters to wake up to the vast gulf that is between the rich and them. Now, do you think this particular call for the caste census would actually resonate with the voters and might have any sort of an effect, given the fact they're all already into alliance with more than 24 parties, around 26 parties with an alliance known as India, and with this particular call of caste census to make the general public know what the lower castes or the marginalized people have been subjected to, and what's the difference of where the power actually is and where the wealth of the country is. Do you think it's going to have any sort of impact on the possible outcomes of the general elections?
First of all, we have to understand the dynamics of the politics of the India. That is that if you are dominating in UP, Bihar, and somehow in the Karnataka, then there is the probability of your government in the center, number one. Number two, the constituency of the BJP, the strong constituency of the BJP is UP and the Bihar, and they are concentrating upon it. And number third, when you are talking about the mechanism, objective, and the doctrine of the BJP politics, number one, they are banking upon the hatred factor. the hatred factor against Muslims and against Pakistan. And same hatred factor you have seen in the ballot boxes in previous 2 elections. Number one. Number two, when you are talking about the manifesto of the BJP in 2014 and in 2018, you will see that all those promises which were made by BJP anti-Muslims, they have been fulfilled. For example, anti-Muslim law, Babri Masjid and Article 370. It is having a great impact on the ballot box of the BJP politics. And number third, when you are talking about the personal impact and you are developing a comparative relationship between Modi and the opposition head Rasool, there is no comparison, because he is promoting himself as an avatar of the India. So it is having now religio-political factor, and which may benefit, which will give benefit to the Modi in the coming elections. And fourth is that set policy has been adopted when you are analyzing 2 consecutive elections of the BJP. The hatred factor against the Muslims, which are the minority, that had proved a strong dividend in the electoral politics of the BJP. And number fourth, Modi didn't rely on the conventional media only. They relied on the social media, as it is a proved formula. Now, whom they targeted? They targeted a particular this age group of the youth, that is 18 and between 24. This is the emotional group which you can inculcate in minds that we are only the survivor India, and it has little to do with the with his economic performance. When you are targeted, because in media agenda setting theory is being applied when you are targeting the electoral politics. Media not only say what to say, but what about to say. But when you are saying about that we are the real forces who has the muscle power to deal with the Muslims as a minority and the Pakistan, it will benefit
Now,
BJP.
why there is so much hatred? Why does BJP always try to capitalize on this anti-Muslim sentiment when they happen to be not in comparison to the chunk of Hindu population over there as overall, they are not that considerable as compared to Hindu population over there? Why does this particular sentiment actually is being capitalized upon?
Actually, you have to go a little bit deep in the electoral politics of the India. Muslims used to be very strong. Particularly, I have been in the UP. I have spent some 2 or 3 years in the UP. I have been very close about the political phenomena of the UP, particularly the Muslim-dominated belts. Despite they were in the minority, but they were both politically very strong, and they were having this muscle to survive under certain conditions. It is why that their business has been snatched. It is not only the business of the Muslims in the Karnataka, it has been snatched. The businesses who was dominating the business of the cloth in the Gujarat, it has been smashed out. And same is the businesses, small businesses of the UP, which were controlled by Muslims since 700 centuries. It has been divided and given to the other community. So when they suppress the Hindu, actually what was the policy of the previous Congress government? They were trying to lure the Muslim community to vote in favor of the Congress, but they don't no need of the these minority votes. We have to concentrate the majority votes, and you will see that this policy has been adopted in previous 2 elections, that we have to concentrate only on the majority vote, and majority votes prime reason is they want that Muslims should be crushed, and he did the same.
Right. Dr. Kausar, your understanding regarding anti-Muslim sentiment, why is it so easily capitalized by the Bharatiya Janata Party to gain that very constituency?
See, all the parties have their own strengths. See, what we need to see is that the politics has choices. You can build politics on constructive arguments, but it's quite easy to build your politics on hate and division. That's what we have seen across the globe. It's easy to build on that policy of division, but it's very difficult to maintain and sustain that exclusive politics. So BJP had that choice, and from the beginning, I guess they're very much clear in that, particularly when the Modi came into the power, that the way they will handle their politics, it's very exclusive, right-wing, Hindu nationalist politics. So in any political leader has this choice. You have seen examples in many instances that you can build your constituency on hate. The problem with such constituencies is that you have to continuously feed that. And he did exactly the same thing. I mean, if you see the way he changed the landscape, political landscape, religious landscape, cultural landscape, linguistic landscape, and other things, that's very much incremental and that's very much informed and deliberate, because that constituency constantly demands that. So I must say it's not exclusively in the case of them, it's anywhere. If you see that politics, you have the choice. The problem with them is they are too diverse, one. Number two, they need India politics. They don't need Hindu politics, I guess. So it has to be a very broader politics to engage and keep that society intact. See, there is another problem that over the period of time we've seen that. He himself as a leader evolved or presented himself in multiple dimensions as a political leader, as a religious or a spiritual guide as well. We've been saying that it's an incarnation as somebody new from the past, I mean, near sort of divine thing. The problem with him is that he, in the politics, he is suffering from that dilemma that he doesn't have that feedback thing from his party or cabinet. If you see, most of his cabinet members and his political colleagues or cabinet members are praising him, are sort of eulogizing him and presenting him as somebody very top spiritual person plus political leader with very strong might, and his political stature is that much that it seems impossible to challenge within BJP. That is a problem when in a democracy, in a society, when you don't have a reasonable opposition. I mean, on the other side, the problem with Congress is that that Gandhi legacy didn't click now. So on the one side, of course, he has built himself as a savior and all other things with the politics, which is very difficult to maintain and sustain and easy to do, by the way, I say. But on the other side, the problem with the Congress and other parties is that they could not evolve as an alternate option to their population. So populism or majoritarian rule is by no means, I say, is something that should be cherished in that way, that it is the ultimate thing. I mean, we have seen Mussolini quite popular. We have seen many people in the world that they've been very popular. So that could be the one indicator. But the problem is that democracy, in essence, is the protection of the rights of minority as well. It's the minority which is central to a democracy. So that remains a challenge. One thing just I want to mention about their politics is, see, with coming elections and their secular nature, with such politics, you generally don't have way out if you want to reconcile, because we never saw them sort of reconciling with their decisions or maybe reconsidering with all these things. So you are building a constituency which is difficult to handle in future. You are building a politics. The sad part is right now, which we need to see, that world is sort of overlooking their human rights and domestic things because of India-China rivalry and because of strategic reasons and all that. And this is not something good for India's long-term politics. How would you come back to your own constitutional things? That would, I guess the time would be too late, because in coming elections, I guess if they get, and apparently it seems that he'll get the majority, they're planning, I guess, because he needs some state governments concurrence as well for some legislation. They would first, I guess they want to change the constitution by calling it, I guess, name of India through Bharat, I guess, and they're also trying to have a more centralized governance in future, because centralization in governance mechanism suits BJP, because most of the states, let's suppose southern and other some few states where there is no BJP, particularly progressive states, you need a very strong central government to control them, to manipulate them, and I guess that would be the next stage for them. So doing sort of amending their own constitution based on certain ideology, it's something, it's in their cards. If you see that Article 370, they've been proclaiming and saying in 2019 manifesto, and that we'll be doing that. But see, the lesson is that India didn't find any viable political solution in Kashmir as well. So what about doing away with all the identity, and you couldn't hold elections or the process, any political or democratic process, you couldn't start because you know people are resisting, and because the people are not with them. So that is the fundamental problem in such politics. Likewise, they'll face in their mainland as well in future.
Right, Dr. Kausar, we know there is Alliance India that is led by Congress, the alliance of more than 26, more than 24 parties over there. Also, this particular second march of Rahul Gandhi from east to west, calling for a caste census. Do you think this particular appeal has that very strength to resonate with the general public, especially of those of marginalized classes? And could this particular appeal put a dent in the prospects of BJP to win by a landslide?
See, I don't see that. It's too late, first. One. The other is that he has also been doing countrywide touring, talking about Bharat Jodo Yatra, I guess, in past, and some other things. I mean, it's part of it politics. I mean, they're trying to sort of reposition their politics, trying to bring in those diverse, their own strength, particularly Congress within India. See, it matters. But right now, the problem with their minorities or with the people other than BJP is sort of an existential threat. I guess it would be too much to say that they could make an electoral difference, but at least if Congress is able to sort of protect their rights and bring them on certain platform and sort of empower them so that further erosion of their rights didn't happen, because it's not good for their own country. So that could be, I guess, something minimum to expect that for long-term politics. But right now, let's be clear that he is dominating India's politics openly.
Right. Dr. Wasi, do you think this particular appeal of caste census stand any sort of a chance to get the Congress anything to cheer about?
You know, this a kind of movement or Jodo Tehreek or whatever you call it, there would be some prospects, but I don't think that it could outshine or it could outwin the Modi phenomenon that we are witnessing, unfortunately, for several reasons. Because the charisma or the religio-political construct that has been created in India with regard to Modi, it doesn't seem, it could be the other way around in the final analysis, but so far my understanding is that it's not easy, you know, to outdo that. So because they have been unable to construct an similar alternative which could counter such kind of discourse led by Modi.
Right, there's been talk about the rigged electronic voting machines also, right? So the opposition wants to go back to the ballot paper. Your understanding regarding to their demand, is it justified? Is it legit? There has been a ruling by the Supreme Court also regarding using the electronic voting machines, not ruling out them altogether, but rather than having a receipt out of it, which can be later verified if there was any difference as regard to the counting of the electronic voting machines.
You know, BJP, because in this, of course, that we are talking about, that there are brighter prospects to win that election, but still there are a lot of challenges which BJP is currently facing. So it will try to, manipulate all these, options to win the election. So I think this move need to be taken in that context.
Right, Dr. Rasool, your understanding regarding the efficacy of electronic voting machines related to the transparency of the elections that are going to happen?
I think they have same structure as with that of the Pakistan, and the reservations are genuine when you are deploying these machines in the far-flung areas where there is an power peg of the BJP government, and they can manipulate these results, and it is nothing new in India. And secondly, when you are targeting the majority community, is the majority and rule, until and unless the opposition parties, at the question you asked to Sir Awais, until and unless you will not get the 40% vote from the majority, the only minorities, if they still come out, definitely they are in the pressure cooker of the BJP hatred politics, they may, if they entirely may vote to Congress and opposition and opposite alliance, still they need 40% vote from the majority. And I have witnessed it, rather it has been telecasted by the media channels also, that when you are targeting the majority Hindus, even Congress didn't allowed to sit on the podium the minority, so that the majority will not get annoyed. So when you are in the electoral politics, you are playing the game, and the game at the 11th hour, who will be voted at the 11th hour, he will win. So BJP has that potential to draw the results in his favor.
Right, Dr. Kausar, how many chances are there of manipulation, and when it comes to transparency of the general elections, the role of electronic voting machines, the justification behind the demand by the opposition of going back to the ballot paper?
See, there are always chances. Of course, the political culture is there. But if you see few months, I guess, back, many Congress members of the state defected to BJP. That was purely, okay, that's fine, but what about the morality of that? So that did happen in past. But what we need to ask that, even if the opposition's objection is right, who will bail the cat? The question is that if you have seen in past, Universal Criminal Court, they went to the court said, look, it's not our jurisdiction. What about Article 370? The court said, no, we validate what the government have done. So right now we need to see the overall political context over there, that even not the civil bureaucracy or the judiciary or judicial institutions are there to challenge actually the government because of its massive popularity. So I don't see any prospect on that.
Right. Dr. Wasi, when we talk about international organizations, the talk of human rights, and also there are certain which I have already mentioned in the introduction regarding as to the kind of events of hate speech which are directed towards minorities, especially Muslims. Now, these sort of reports, what happens to be the significance of such reports, including that particular report of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, for those policymakers into the Western world that have been friendly towards India and has not been urging the Indian authorities to stop its high-handedness towards the minorities?
This is very unfortunate, but at the same time there is a silver lining as far as these reports are concerned. Once we see these reports coming from different quarters, international organizations, and even United States Commission that has issued that report, but at the same time we see that the global political order, the regional imperatives, perhaps they are not letting the powerful capitals to implement what they are recommending. For example, that we previously discussed, that UN Rapporteur said this report that US Commission for Religious Rights, this is, this has been issuing for several years, but there is a contradiction between this forum and the United States Department's policy, and their stakes in Asia Pacific and encirclement of containment of China and other regional interests. I think they are
okay. Those regional interests, Indo-Pacific, that you talk about, containment of China. Now, this particular U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom is also approved by the Congress. It reports to the President, the Secretary of State, and to the Congress also, right? It gives its recommendations. It's a bipartisan body from within the administrative system of the U.S. So when it is urging the State Department, to which it reports also, that which countries should be added into the list of countries of particular concern. So what does that actually depict? Is it the difference of understanding or the difference in the approaches as far as the priorities are concerned when it comes to the State Department not including, despite the strong recommendation for consecutive years by this commission?
I think there is it seems that there is a method in madness, that on the one side, for the international consumption, these reports are being issued to give a message or to give a signal to the international community. But when it comes to the implementation, so their regional interests come in the way. So I think that there is some deliberate attempt, and that kind of dichotomy is being created purposefully.
Dr. Rasool, what do the authorities actually derive when such reports are released?
Actually, you need a lot of homework when you want to get some benefit out of these reports. Number one. Number two, pursual, continuous pursual. Number three, you need some lobbying in various groups if you want that there should be some substantive outcome of these reports. Number four, if still these reports prove that they are true, still you need push from other government and non-government organizations. Otherwise they never will the dividend.
Right, Dr. Kausar, what happens to be the responsibility when the US Commission on International Religious Freedom is urging the State Department to include India into the list of countries of particular concern? What ideally should be done by the State Department after those recommendations?
See, ideally, of course, there are many mechanisms and, of course, the processes that should be followed, because once you violate these human rights, and I mean, sadly, we know that geoeconomics is actually taking the center stage these days, from the decade almost or more, and then the human rights thing is on the back stage. That's the third part of it. The world is witnessing. We have seen in Palestine, Gaza, everywhere. And I guess, but the utility of such thing is, I guess it won't remain same for long. So this has its own significance. It stays there, it remains there. The countries must talk to them. And I guess the more, the important thing is that the Indian civil society particularly, that is also squeezed, having less spaces, they need to be empowered to talk on these things. And of course, I personally think that you have to keep the human rights, dignity of human beings and all these things as a center stage. If you want to claim, and if you claim for UNSC membership, if you want to portray yourself as a democratic liberal state, you can't have this dichotomy. At the end of the day, it has its own cost.
Right. One last question. Your quick last closing comment on this case of Natasha Cole, who was denied entry into India, happens to be a professor of political science in the UK's University of Westminster, just because she had been critical of the policies of Modi and his government.
I mean, this shows that the politics of BJP doesn't have any space of opposition and criticism, because it has its own insecurities. So politics which is balanced, which is based on certain values of justice, you allow these spaces, because this is what the democracy is. But once you do the politics which is very exclusive, or politics which divides, hate, of course you have to hide a lot of things, and you have to, of course, squeeze those spaces to flourish there. This is purely a case where you don't appreciate opposition, which is part of a democracy.
Dr. Rasool, this is not the case of its own kind, the first case of its own kind. A number of other Indian origin foreigners, their OCIs, the Overseas Citizens of India, cards have been revoked. What sort of message does it send to the outer world, particularly to the West?
Simply exposes the drama of the great democracy of the mega world, simply exposes. Number two, they are always signatory to the Human Rights Commission, but they have been denying it right from beginning. And number third, they are believing in ahimsa. We even do not hurt to the animals and the insects, but they are killing in broad daylight the people,
Right.
and they are not allowing even a small sand voice of the professor.
Right, Dr.
This is
Wasi, your
just out
closing
there.
comments regarding this particular case in particular.
I think that the better explanation, I can borrow the word by Arundhati Roy, that India's democracy is not democracy, it is in fact demon crazy. And this is not particular to Natasha Cole, a leading novelist, but it happened to a French journalist who has been serving in India, and she has been on editorial board of several magazines for 22 years.
It has
22 years.
A number of others,
but 22 years,
also.
and she has been exiled now.
Dr. Awais Bin Wasi, Indian Affairs expert, thank you very much for being with us in the studio. Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, Foreign Affairs expert, thank you very much for your time also for being with us in the show tonight. Dr. Waleed Rasool, International Relations expert, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for being with us.